For me, the whole thing with Earth-based awareness is it's a more indigenous way of thinking, which is that the Earth itself is alive and contains a kind of awareness that we as people can tap into. And the advantage of that is that the Earth itself contains all the different energies. And any particular region of the Earth contains many different kinds of energies. So the Earth itself is a kind of a natural facilitator. Its awareness has a kind of unified field to begin with. So we as humans can contact that energy and utilize it as a way to go beyond our ordinary differences and polarizations. Well, any human being or place on the earth that contains the different polarities within them and has that awareness that touches on all the different energies is by itself then facilitative. So, for example, if I go to one of my favorite places on the Oregon coast, it has very rough energy in the waves and in the cliffs, and very soft energy in the sand, and all these different kinds of energies are already there, so that the usual polarizations are already working together as part of nature. So that's why I say it in itself the awareness of it is facilitative, because it's already worked out the problems. There is no problem. You don't have the ocean saying to the beach, I won't connect with the sand because you're not like me. You're different than me, you see. There's just this natural cooperation. There's an eco-community, you could say. All the different parts of nature work interdependently with each other. From a process work standpoint, first of all, I think we're very much in favor of problems also, because out of differences and polarization comes an appreciation of differences and diversity. And we're different and we're proud of our differences is very important. But if you, at other moments, especially moments of intense conflict, can't access the part that's also unified and connected, then conflict just tends to grow. And in a way, it's not ecological, because we're always trying to throw away or push away one kind of energy. And so we don't really relate to the complexity of the whole system. We try to just simplify things into good and bad, or we're right and they're wrong, or whatever. But that in itself is anti-ecological. It's not sustainable. The other side will come back with a vengeance if pushed away far enough. And it also doesn't recognize the need for deep democracy, for the value of all roles and energies.
That sounds fantastic what you're talking about, and yet it seems such a difficult thing. For example, if you see someone spraying kind of poisons on the land, or damaging wildlife, or to think or to relate to that in those ecological terms.
Right. Well, it's interesting how prejudice we get. It's synchronistic. I was just out taking a walk. I live out in the country. And the guy who tends to spray was out with his fruit trees. And I said to my partner, let's not go up there. He's probably spraying again. So that's a polarization. But he yelled down and said, you know what I'm doing? And we said, what? He said, I'm trying this new thing I read about. I'm putting molasses and vinegar, bottles of it, on the fruit trees, because I read about this somewhere. And you know what? I'd rather do this. I really don't want to spray. And so the polarization that I see him as Mr. Spray isn't complex enough. And in fact, once I talked to him and I said, I don't like that you spray so much. And he said, well, he said, I have this huge place and I can't really manage it without sprays. He said, but I did all this research, and I'll give you the link I found to a spray that looks like it rapidly biodegrades and seems to have, of all sprays, the least impact on the earth and animals. So this is this idea of complexity theory. I just am so mad at him all the time for spraying, but that's an oversimplification. It's interesting. I'm part of a new program that's forming for training social activists in sustainable practices themselves, how to make their own organizations more sustainable. And I've just been helping write this curriculum today on sustainability of social action. And I think there's a few keys to it. One is that we really are emphasizing that you have a sustainable relationship to your own body,
Mm.
and that you know ways to take care of and process your own body and your own body symptoms, because a lot of social activism neglects the body and sacrifices the individual.
Mm.
So that you have a sustainable relationship to your body, that we also believe in sustainable relationship work, and that the whole way that we treat our bodies and interact with our bodies and treat our partners, and the way we're connected to social issues, it's all connected and it's all the same. So we don't just work on social issues, we work on our bodies, our relationships, and finally, in terms of our communities, that the communities that are connected and know and do things to stay in touch with their deepest visions tend to be much more sustainable over time.
So you're saying communities' visions, and then I'm thinking, do communities have a vision together, or so, like if you have a town or a village, do you think does that have a vision? Do you think, or do they have to find their collective vision? What if they disagree on their vision?
Well, with a community, like let's say we take where you live or something like that, that's different. But the earth itself has certain qualities that people must share, that they pick that place to live.
Hmm.
But I'm talking about more intentional communities like social action groups
Yeah.
and world change groups. They tend to have a central deep vision. Now, as you get away from the depth of that vision, there's all kinds of conflicts.
Hmm.
But many groups lose the sense of that vision. For example, I remember one of the first peace groups I worked with uh, wanted to kill one of its members.
Hmm.
There was a lot of talk about it, about literally wishing he would die and stuff like that, or wish we could kill him. Well, they weren't really in a way in touch with the vision at that moment. They were in touch with a momentary reaction, which is important. But going back always to that deepest vision,
Mm. Mm.
whether it's the whether if you're in a relationship, the deepest core of your relationship, if you're in a sustainable in a community, for example, working for sustainability, really being in touch with that depth and seeing how, from the perspective of that depth, what that depth advises about all the problems that come up. Right. Well, let's say in the community I live, let's say that there have at times been very strong conflict that we've gone into. For example, we had town meetings here in this little town I live in of 3,000 people. Years ago, the Mindells came and whatever, because there was so much conflict over a ballot measure that was against gays and lesbians.
Hmm.
And that was before we developed the earth-based work. But if we did it again, I would really bring in, we all tend to live out here because there's a lot of space, there's a lot of privacy and individual freedom, there's a lot of beauty, there's a lot of wildlife, and people live out here. Almost everybody has a garden or a horse or something. So there's a lot of commonality that draws us out here, even though one person may be on one side of an issue and one person on the other. I would use that commonality to create an atmosphere where we could work on the issues in uh, less conflict, actually.
Hmm.
In the United States, that bringing in the African American community has really deepened and changed the ecological movement, because we went from mostly middle and upper class white people in the Sierra Club and whatever, caring about very important things about, you know, birds surviving and the
Hmm.
old growth forests and things like that. But it deepened the movement now, where there's more of a coalition, because most of the heavy pollution actually is in the inner cities and in the poor areas.
Hmm.
And so suddenly we're now connecting racism and eco issues. So you see there's a natural alliance that's built. And so I think that the more these movements find their common ground, It strengthens all the movements.